Hey, good to see everybody right here on 5 News Plus for another edition of 5 Outdoors. This one's the favorite one we do all year long. It is now duck season in Arkansas. We're joined by Trey Reid from the Arkansas Game and Fish Commission to talk all things ducks. Trey, it's finally upon us. I think we've agreed it's our favorite day of the year. It's better than Christmas. Let's talk about what we can expect going into the season, what's changed, what's new, and what hunters probably should go and study up on before they head out to the duck blind.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. And you are 100% correct. It is probably one of my favorite days on the calendar throughout the year. I've been duck hunting a long time. I think I'm close to 50 years plus. I've been duck hunting in Arkansas now, which means I'm either old or I started very young, or both, maybe
Or both.
in this case. But no, it is. We're of course known for duck hunting across the country and around the world. Not a lot of significant changes to talk about. The pintail bag limit is a little different this year. It's actually you can shoot more pintails as part of kind of a trial, if you will, or an interim harvest strategy to basically see if some of the fancy statistical models that they've used for pintails, if what we're doing with pintail harvest under this 3-bird bag limit, and Arkansas is a pretty heavy state for pintail harvest. If it lines up with what the statistics and the harvest survey is telling us. So that's probably the big one, is you can shoot a few more pintails. Of course, we got a waterfowl guidebook out there with all the rules and regulations. For those who don't recall, last year was the first year in a number of years when you can use spinning wing decoys on state wildlife management areas. Those have been prohibited for a number of years, so those are back, of course. But yeah, I mean, Scott, I guess really probably the biggest thing to talk about right now as we are going into opening weekend, first segment of the season, is we did get some rain back Thursday morning early. I know it shook me out of bed almost literally when the thunderstorms hit, and that's good. We needed the rain really desperately. It's been quite dry. We can stand a little bit more colder weather. We had some 80-degree temperatures across Arkansas earlier this week, and that's just not really conducive to pushing a lot of migratory waterfowl southward from more northern latitudes. The other thing to keep in mind is, again, even with the rain, and hopefully this rain is going to help and it's going to change things, but many of our public areas, especially our green tree reservoirs, just aren't going to have much water during this first segment. Now, again, many of our operation dates for green tree reservoirs are November 15th, but some of them are later than that. Some of them are December 1st or even a little bit later. So just keep that in mind. And again, remember, we have delayed our operation dates for some of these water control structures for a number of years now. This is nothing new. November 15th has been the very earliest on any of our green tree reservoirs, really. Probably for at least 5-6 years now. And that's to protect our red oak regeneration in some of these areas, the next generation of bottomland hardwood forests that offer shelter, cover, and food for these migratory ducks that are coming to Arkansas. Now, our moist soil units are a slightly different story. Frog Bio, for instance, near Alma, we could put a little bit of water on those earlier. And so frogs got some water. Unfortunately, another popular moist soil wildlife management area in the river valley will not have much or any water, thanks to the work of some thieves at Ed Gordon Point Removed WMA, who stole some copper, basically did about $50,000 worth of damage to a pump and a variable frequency drive that sort of is the heart of that pump that keeps it operating at different levels, so that we can efficiently and effectively move water. So we're hoping to get that fixed within the next few weeks. Hopefully, fingers crossed. We've had some delays on some parts and things, but I'm saying all that to say, let's temper expectations about this season, especially early, because we just don't. There's not that many ducks in Arkansas yet, right? It's been really warm. We don't have a lot of water on the landscape. So, and then you've got to remember too that things don't really start to pick up in Arkansas and until mid-December anyway. But our duck populations, we're not starting with that many this
That's right.
year. Roughly unchanged from this year, which was roughly unchanged from the year before. The ponds on the northern prairies in the northern U.S. and Canada numbers were really down, like almost 20% down on ponds. Now there was some late rain in the early summer that probably helped renesting effort as well as late nesting species, and so that may make up for some of that. But remember that we are not at population levels like we were, say, 99, 2000, when we had some just incredible years. That bounce back up 2012, 2013, had some pretty decent population numbers then as well. But just remember that as you go out in the field, that like our numbers are again, continental populations of waterfowl just aren't as good right now as some people like to remember they were, especially in some of those glory years like 99, 2000.
So let's dive a little deeper there into why these numbers are so low. Arkansas, duck capital of the world. But we have to remember these ducks, they're not born here. They're born up in Canada. Let's talk a little bit about the conditions there and how that's played such a significant role in the impact of what we see here the last few years.
Yeah, and Scott, look, I mean, I don't want to take anything away from obviously what the Arkansas Game and Fish Commission or Fish and Wildlife Service and other partners or what private landowners are doing here in Arkansas to set the table for the ducks when they do get here. But it really, if you want to get down to it, it's really all about what's happening on the prairies. That is probably the most important piece of the habitat puzzle. And you've got these wetlands, small, isolated wetlands, and sometimes they're in great densities in certain areas in Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and even in North South Dakota, eastern Montana. But those potholes, because they're small and ephemeral, they don't, a dry year, if there's not a lot of snow in the wintertime, if there's not like late spring, early summer rains, they just don't have water in them. And so, and also you've got the quality of those potholes and those wetlands in Canada and northern U.S. Now, here in the U.S., we do have some provisions written into like the Farm Bill and federal law that, prevent people from draining these wetlands or clearing right up to the edge of them. There's some incentive payments through the Farm Bill, Conservation Reserve, Wetland Reserve programs that help, bolster the productivity of those. But there is not that same thing going on in Canada. In Canada, it's actually the provincial governments and not the federal government that controls like wetland and water policy there. So, yeah, I mean, there's really not a lot we can do other than to, encourage your congressmen and senators to support some of these policies on the U.S. side of the border. But another thing you can do is to support organizations like Ducks Unlimited and Delta Waterfowl that do great work in the Canadian portion of the breeding grounds. Arkansas Game and Fish, for instance, makes an annual contribution to Ducks Unlimited Canada that is matched by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, Canadian government, and you end up getting like this 4 or 5 to 1 multiplier on our donation that really does important habitat work up there. So those are some things you can do. But yeah, I mean, really getting back to the crux of it, if you look at water levels and then the bounty of those ponds, those potholes in Canada, the northern U.S., against put those on a graph, or rainfall, for instance, works as well, and put those on a graph and then lay duck populations over that, they track perfectly. I mean, ducks are one of the most well-studied species in all of wildlife management. We've been doing some of these counts on the prairie since 1955, I believe, or 54. So there's a lot of data there, and it is undeniable, the relationship between the amount of water in the northern U.S. and Canada and duck populations. It's as simple as that.
So conditions, we know at some point, and hopefully sooner rather than later, they're going to turn good up on the prairies, which illustrates and highlights the importance of the habitat work that you guys are doing here now. In the meantime, one of the things I just get sad about, I talked to a friend who used to just be an avid duck hunter, but yeah, had a few rough seasons just because of the conditions up on the prairie, and he's not doing it anymore. Okay, well, less hunters out there to shoot birds, but it also means less duck stamps purchased, less money going back into
Sure.
conservation, which just makes all this a little bit harder.
Yeah, I mean, and you hear a lot of discussion about that. I mean, we do. I mean, duck hunting is as popular as it's ever been. I mean, you can call it the duck commander effect. People talk about the class of '99. I've alluded to those great years of '99 and 2000. A lot of people came in then. You know, we haven't had anything less than a 60-day season since I think '97 or something, around there. So it's been almost 30 years. There's a whole generation of duck hunters that don't know anything else. But no, you're right, Scott. I mean, every duck stamp purchase, state and federal, goes right back into habitat work. I mean, obviously, what you spend on a hunting license here in Arkansas, we use for habitat work. But it is disappointing when you see that. But I think, you know, what this brings up to me probably more than anything else is that we have to remember that, you know, as far as going out and having a great day, look, I want to have that. You want to have that. All duck hunters want to go out and have a great day. I mean, but we have this tendency as humans to only remember those great days
Right.
and not necessarily maybe some of those days that weren't as great when we just sat in the blind and looked at empty skies, and it's like golden age thinking, whatever you want to call it, like, oh, it was always better in the past, because that's how we're wired as humans, right? To remember the good and maybe suppress the bad, you know, so those feelings don't bubble up to the surface as frequently. But you got to remember, like, there are going to be good days, there's going to be bad days, there's going to be good seasons, and there's going to be bad seasons. And I'll throw this out as a caveat, Scott, even though duck numbers are not maybe as high right now over the last few years as they have been in the past, you know, that again, 99, 2000, some record populations back then. But that doesn't mean we won't have good numbers of ducks or good opportunities in Arkansas. If it gets cold, if it snows enough in the northern plains and the Midwest, if we have plenty of water on the landscape down here, the ducks are going to come. There may be fewer of them, but they may be concentrated here in the lower part of the Mississippi Flyway and Central Flyways. So, I mean, you know, it's one of those things. It's a bitter pill to swallow when you go out and have poor days, but you got to remember, like, the ducks don't owe us anything, right?
That's
I mean,
right.
there are no
You can say that
guarantees.
again.
There are no guarantees in the world. The ducks don't owe us anything. They're just being ducks and doing what they do, right? And if we're fortunate, you know, that's what attracts me to duck hunting, Scott. That marvel of the annual migration. It is such a fleeting thing. They are only here for a limited amount of time. What they've gone through to just to, you know, like 15% survival of waterfowl in the breeding grounds is considered excellent. That's what we need to sustain and maintain populations. So what you're saying is 85 out of 100 duck eggs ain't making it, right? So
Right.
the fact that they hatch, they survive to adulthood, learn to fly, didn't get eaten by predators, make it to Arkansas and over our decoys in front of our guns for that one fleeting moment makes it pretty special. Keep that in mind, and as opposed to maybe worrying about the overall quality of hunting.
I think you're exactly right. Make an incredible point. That's also to say the work Game and Fish has been doing, even through all these bad years, is consistent. So we know that when
Yeah,
conditions turn, when those population numbers go up, we're going to be ready and not just caught it flat-footed.
no, that's right, Scott. I mean, and we have not let our foot off the gas. If anything, we're pressing on it harder. I mean, obviously, we've talked some here about the improvements and renovations to our Green Tree Reservoir infrastructure. I've already mentioned making our operational dates, holding water a little bit later, and that's not always popular among duck hunters. Yeah. Who doesn't want to go out there and see a full pool of water in your favorite Green Tree Reservoir on opening day? But unfortunately, we just can't do that for long-term sustainability. But, you know, we've got over almost 11,000 acres now of moist soil habitat that we manage just as Arkansas Game and Fish. All the ag lands out there, again, all of our forested wetlands and our Green Tree Reservoirs and bottomland hardwood forests, White River National Wildlife Refuge in southeast Arkansas, Cache River Refuge, east central Arkansas. We are very fortunate to have some great habitat here in the work that Arkansas Game and Fish and some of our many partners do, as well as private landowners. we've got to keep doing that. I mean, even if duck populations are down, we are going to keep doing that. So that if we do get a good push, even if with lower numbers, if they get here, they're going to have something to eat. They're going to stick around. They're going to want to be here, and we're going to want to come back here next year. And then when we get, those populations go back up to those higher levels, man, the table's going to be set. All they're going to have to do is sit down and eat, man.
The beauty and majesty of migration is one thing, but then you start talking about all the things we can do in the meantime to make it better for them. That really gets me excited too. A lot of that's based in science, which sometimes, as a scientist, I can say this, isn't the most popular. Let's talk a little bit about some expectations when it comes to water levels and kind of the science
Sure.
behind it on those green tree reservoirs.
Yeah, Scott. I mean, for a number of years, we've been talking about, delayed flooding. And what do I mean by delayed flooding? Well, in the past, some of these green tree reservoirs have been flooded up in October in the past. Well, years of doing that, years of the infrastructure, most of which was put in the 50s and 60s, some into the 70s, maybe early 80s. But we've been doing things the same way for a long time. And you mentioned science, and we did not necessarily have the robust level of science that we have now to look at some of these things. But you can trust your eyes, and when you look out there and we do these forest health assessments and we say, hey, there's a lot of especially the important red oak component of our bottomland hardwood forests on these game and fish owned areas, and private areas for that matter as well, and federal public lands also. You look out there and you see these trees are not healthy. I mean, you got dead trees, they get blown over by wind. And what's going on there? Well, we now know that putting the water on too early before those trees are dormant, or the infrastructure that we created half a century ago that we're still operating under in a lot of cases, that it doesn't allow us to move that water through the system, to evacuate that water. A lot of people bring up, well, why are y'all worried about it in the winter when the trees are dormant? Worry about it in the spring because I go out there and I see water on the trees. Well, yeah, again, that's all the result of this infrastructure. We basically unintentionally created some bottlenecks, making it harder for water to get out. So, because it rains a lot in the spring too, right? I mean, we know that. And now some of these trees, are these bottomland oak species in particular, have evolved over time to withstand some of that, even when they aren't dormant. But it's typically like a flashy thing. Like the water gets up on them, they can take it for a few days, and then the floodwaters recede, and then it dries out. But because of some of this infrastructure, this man-made infrastructure that was put in place, that water doesn't evacuate, it doesn't recede as quickly, and so we have to look at the things we can control. And so one of the things we made a decision to do a number of years ago, and I think did a great job of informing the duck hunting public about this, is like November 15th is going to be the very earliest that we hold water pretty much anywhere. And I'm talking on forested areas. The moist soil areas are slightly different because you don't have the trees to worry about there. So one thing that we've done this year, and we've had these plans in place, but we've made them a little more easy to find for the public. If you go to agfc.com/GTR, there's a spreadsheet there for our moist soil units and another one for our green tree reservoirs. Every not just the wildlife management area, but every individually flooded unit, there's going to be a date, and maybe multiple dates in some cases, of when we're going to hold the water, what our target levels are, and so look, we're not trying to hide anything here, but you have to remember, again, I made the comment earlier, the ducks don't owe us anything. Well, you look at the Game and Fish Commission's mission statement, and one of our prime responsibilities is taking care of this habitat, not just for now, but for 20, 30 years from now, for 50 years from now, for 100 years from now. And if we want to continue to have truly world class, better than anywhere else in the world, duck hunting, and we're famous for that flooded green timber. We have more of it than any place else in the world, and it's certainly North America. And That's what people come to Arkansas to do. And if we want our children and grandchildren and great grandchildren to be able to lean against a nut all oak tree and a bottomland hardwood forest and shin deep water, kicking it and pulling a jerk string and watching mallards flutter through those treetops, we have got to make a little bit of sacrifice now and delay those flooding dates. And you know, quite frankly, Scott, spend some of the money that we're spending now, not a small amount of money, to repair and renovate this infrastructure in these green tree reservoirs so that we can effectively and efficiently manage water in a more sustainable long-term way while still providing duck hunting opportunity, I might add. You know, if we want to really get down to brass tacks here, you know, if it was just about the trees and we weren't thinking about hunters, we're just thinking about the habitat, we'd rip all that infrastructure out and just let the water come in when the rivers pulsed up and flow out when they went down. But that's not what we're doing. We're trying to balance opportunity with habitat and long-term sustainability. That's what it's all about.
You know, in a world where everyone has an opinion, I guarantee you mine is worthless, but I'll tell you mine anyways. I am so thankful for the last few years you guys have been doing that because it's not popular, but it's what the science suggests is needed for the ducks, for us, for the future, and that's what matters most. I value that a lot. And you said we can find that information on your website. Where exactly is that again?
Yeah, it's agfc.com/GTR. That will take you. That's kind of our wetlands landing page. There's a lot of great information there beyond that. But yeah, you'll see a couple of Excel spreadsheets, one for moist soil and one for green tree reservoirs. Yeah, it's great. I mean, I've already been using the information. I had a guy call me the other day wanting to know about a hurricane WMA, and I was like, yeah, like here are the dates. And like there, for instance, I'll give you a great example, Scott. I really appreciate your focus on science and talking about that. And I'll try to make this as succinct as possible. But
you're good. You take all the time you want.
We know that we're getting red oak regeneration there where we lost a lot of trees, over 1,000 acres, maybe a couple of thousand at Henry Gray Hurricane Lake Wildlife Management Area. We have got some good red oak regeneration in the 190 to 192 foot mean sea level elevation. Okay. So with this new water control structure that went active last November, we can really kind of do. I mean, look, Mother Nature, as one of your former colleagues reminded me today, his father worked for the Corps of Engineers. Mother Nature bats last, right? So let's remember that. But this new structure allows us to, because we know that regeneration is going on between 190 and 192 feet, we're going to pulse that water up in December to about 188. Then January, when it's a lot colder and those trees should be dormant and be able to withstand the effects of being inundated, we're going to go to 190. And then a little later into January, we're going to go to 192. So again, this is all, you know, using LIDAR data shot from airplanes, lasers that tell us, like, you know, very minute adjustments in elevation and going out and doing forest health assessments and looking at what our regeneration is and quantifying all that. And that allows us to kind of put all this into the bigger picture and like, well, this is what we can do with water to protect those trees, but to still provide hunting opportunity, even some earlier opportunity when what the science is actually telling us is those trees, if we're putting water on them, those little trees right now, they're going to die. But we can get up right to that edge, that level where they are, so you can still hunt in those lower elevations. Now, is the whole area going to be flooded, you know, early? No, but ultimately it will be if Mother Nature cooperates, and then we can, again, man, it's all about that balance of long-term sustainability and short-term opportunity.
I love it. I love when we can talk duck science. In fact, I was thinking on here, I know the busiest man that you work with, Luke Naylor, is probably going to be tied up for a little bit. This is his like prime season, but we got to have him on an episode just to talk duck science one day. And of course, is it Brent? Is that?
Yeah, Brett Leach is our new waterfowl program coordinator.
Luke when Luke
is
moved
our
up.
wildlife chief, but was waterfowl coordinator for 16 years or so. So he still gets a lot of the duck calls because people certainly associate him with the program, even though Brett's our waterfowl coordinator these days.
Well, could you imagine a roundtable discussion with Luke and Brett and then Dr. Askren, perhaps? I would probably pay. I'd pay money to listen to that conversation. Talk about three smart waterfowl experts.
Absolutely, no doubt. I mean, Scott, I'm a lot like you. I mean, waterfowl hunting, duck hunting in particular, has been my passion since childhood. I mean, I duck hunt and I fish. That's what I do as far as enjoying the great outdoors. But the last 19 years of my career at Arkansas Game and Fish, and even before that, as a journalist, being able to talk to some of these scientists and I mean, I was always drawn to it, again, talking about that, that fleeting nature of the odds of me and a duck coming into contact with each other, all the things he's gone through and with the migration and the timing of everything and all the variables. But when you get in and you start to understand some of the science that goes into waterfowl management, it's even more fascinating and even more intriguing to me.
I love it. Okay, let's wrap up with just some small housekeeping notes. Maybe someone's getting back into it this year. Maybe they've never duck hunted before. You need a federal stamp. You need a state stamp. But both of those these days, electronic, huh? That's not brand new, but newish.
Yeah, well, this is the first year for the federal stamp where you actually, or was it the second year? Anyway,
Second year, I
but
believe.
you've been able to buy an electronic federal stamp before, but it was, it was only good for like 45 days, I think is what it was. And then they would, so like say I bought it the day before duck season, I could conceivably go about to January before I actually needed to carry the physical stamp. That is different this year, that you can actually buy an electronic stamp that's good throughout the whole year. You never have to have the physical stamp in your possession. As a matter of fact, the Fish and Wildlife Service won't send you that stamp until after the season, so you can't like kind of give your stamp, get a one deal, like use your electronic, license copy and then the actual physical stamp. So.
Right.
That's slightly new this year. Don't forget, you need Harvest Information Program, which is basically just a survey the Fish and Wildlife Service uses to kind of narrow down who they're going to ask to send in wings or to do a daily diary. A lot of people think HIP, that whole, did you kill 0 to 10 last year or more than 10, that like that's how they're deriving harvest estimates. No, that's how they're determining which hunters they're going to select out of that random group to do a little bit deeper dive to then do some harvest estimates from that. So, but it is required. It's free. HIP, Harvest Information Program, just a short survey, again, asking you about some of your migratory bird experiences last year. And then if you're going to hunt on a wildlife management area, you do need, if you're a resident, a free WMA hunting permit. Now, if you're a non-resident, I know you have a lot of viewers, and of course online everywhere, but Oklahoma and Missouri and what have you, non-residents. So there are some people who are way smarter than me that are using these statistical models to figure out how many ducks can hunters take before they start to have population impacts, right? And so most of what we think about in the waterfowl world, we call it compensatory mortality. So that's kind of this theory that like a duck that a hunter kills was probably going to die anyway, like a fox was going to get it, or whatever, a peregrine falcon, a hawk, an eagle, going down the line. So what they're saying is that this 3 pintail harvest strategy is a way to kind of put some of that theory to the test. Like, okay, we know what pintail populations are. We know what we think the effect hunters have. Let's see what happens when they go to 3. Now, you could make the argument, so you're tinkering with like, the species by like this. Now, look, we're not going to wipe pintails out. The harvest, most people are never going to touch 3 pintails, okay?
Right.
but yeah, I mean, the average duck hunter shoots like 2.1 birds per outing, period, total ducks, not per species. So let's keep that in mind. But anyway, just as a way of explanation, there has been some question about that, but it's an interim kind of a trial harvest strategy that we might, depending on how, what the science tells us on the back end of this, might affect the way we set bag limits and things like that for other species across the board into the future.
I love it. All right. We could probably take the rest of this 24/7 stream.
I was going to say, Scott, we could probably fill
Oh,
up
man.
hours
I
talking
love
about
it. It
ducks
gets
here.
me so excited. Ducks are incredible, but ducks and science, just a couple of my favorite things. That'll do it, Trey. You got to go back to work. We appreciate your time here. We know we'll be visiting with
Scott.
you more and more throughout the rest of the season. For now, though, that'll do it for this edition of 5 Outdoors, exclusively right here on 5 News Plus.